A young nun named Sister Mary prays and waits for the Mother Superior to fall asleep so she can swipe her keys. She hurries towards the exit of the church but is seen, and members of the convent chase her. When she cannot open the gate, she squeezes between the bars to get out. Unfortunately, one of the members grabs her leg and breaks it. She blacks out from the pain, but when she wakes up, she finds herself in a coffin, buried alive, and screams in futility for help. After that, we see Sister Cecilia is questioned by a police officer. The officer greets her warmly, welcoming her to Italy, and wishes her good luck in her journey to become a nun. At the airport, Sister Cecilia is met by a person named Deacon, who escorts her to the church. She reaches an exclusive convent where dying nuns are tended to during their remaining days. She receives a warm welcome and is given a tour by another sister named Isabel. Sister Isabel appears to be annoyed at her presence and advises her to leave now before she changes her mind later, but Cecilia's mind is already made up. In the bathroom, Cecilia encounters another sister named Gwen, who, after smoking a cigarette, apologizes for intruding and suggests locking the door next time. She prepares herself for the solemn ceremony to take her vows. During the proceedings, she encounters Father Tedeschi once more, the one who initially suggested she join the convent. As the ceremony unfolds, Cardinal Franco guides her through the vows and officially announces her as a nun. At the ceremony, Cecilia talks with Father Tedeschi, and he shares how much he loves being at the convent. Then Cecilia tells him about her past. When she was 12, she fell through the ice on a lake and almost drowned. She was declared dead for 7 minutes but was saved. Cecilia feels thankful to God for giving her another chance to live. That's why, when Father Tedeschi invited her to join the Italian convent, she said yes without hesitation. After the ceremony, Cecilia is in the bathroom, and she hears someone crying. She follows the sound and finds a nun praying on the ground. Cecilia comforts her, but when the nun turns around, she has no face, which scares her. The Reverend Mother then appears and takes Cecilia to the altar. She shows Cecilia an old nail from a glass box, saying it is from Jesus' cross. The Reverend Mother shows Cecilia her hand. She says it is a sign of forgiveness for her sins. Cecilia gets disturbed by this and passes out on the ground. After waking up, Cecilia attempts to talk to the cardinal about her sins, but he remains silent. She keeps calling out to him, but suddenly, she feels multiple arms gripping her from behind, and she's held tightly by hooded figures in front of her. Their hands touch her face before one of them stabs her in the chest, and Cecilia jolts awake from her nightmare. She glances towards the door and sees a figure staring at her, slowly coming closer. Cecilia lights the lampshade to get a better look, but there's no one there by the door. During breakfast, the Reverend Mother addressed everyone, but Cecilia and Gwen were caught giggling. The Reverend Mother noticed and scolded them. The young nuns then familiarized themselves with the routines of the convent. Cecilia and Gwen found joy in each other's company as they worked diligently. They also assisted in caring for an elderly nun until her passing. Cecilia notices Sister Isabel staring at her, but when a white sheet briefly blocks her view, Sister Isabel vanishes. Later that night, when Cecilia is about to fall asleep, an older nun suddenly cuts her hair. Confused but not wanting to cause a disturbance, Cecilia accompanies the older nun back to the clinic where the sickly nuns are tended to. Before she leaves, Cecilia notices a scar on the nun's feet in the shape of a cross. The next day, Cecilia and the other young nuns bathe together, and Gwen shares her story of how she came to join the convent. Gwen used to live with her abusive ex-boyfriend, and one day when she finally fought back, she realized she had to leave him. When she witnessed the security and shelter provided by the nuns, so she decided to join them, even though her faith wasn't as strong as theirs. Cecilia listens quietly to Gwen's story until she suddenly feels unwell. After a checkup and while waiting for the results, she notices a figure outside. She watches it for a while but gets shocked and a bird falls right in front of her. Cecilia is called to the cardinal's office, where she faces questioning. The cardinal asks if she has broken her vows before joining the convent. Scared, Cecilia denies it. Father Tedeschi asks if she ever slept with a man before. Despite never being in a relationship or losing her virginity, Cecilia denies it. When the doctor examines her, they are astounded to find that she is pregnant. The Cardinal and Father Tedeschi are overjoyed, believing Cecilia to be the next Virgin Mary. A ceremony is held to honor the miracle bestowed upon them by God. However, Sister Isabel and Gwen don't seem pleased. As Cecilia progresses into her second trimester, she starts noticing strange occurrences. During a bout of vomiting, she discovers that one of her teeth has fallen out. While relaxing in the bathtub, Cecilia is suddenly pushed underwater. She struggles as Isabel attempts to drown her, but she is rescued by a senior and two younger nuns. Isabel is pulled away, screaming angrily about how it should have been her. After a checkup, they are relieved to know the baby is okay. Cecilia confronts Father Tedeschi about Isabel's statement, asking what it means. He explains that Isabel is jealous of her. When Cecilia requests to see a different doctor, they make excuses to prevent her from leaving. After what happened to Isabel, Cecilia started to be more careful and doubtful about the other nuns. While she's walking down the hallway, she sees two nuns staring at her from a window. Suddenly, someone jumps from the rooftop. Cecilia rushes to check, only to find out it's Isabel, which shocks her deeply. At the funeral, Gwen tells Cecilia not to trust anyone. Father Tedeschi steps in when he hears this, asking what's the matter. Gwen gets mad and starts yelling at everyone because they seem calm and don't know why Isabel died or how Cecilia got pregnant. She keeps saying mean things about the convent and its bosses until Father Tedeschi and Deacon Enzo take her away. Late at night, Cecilia sneaks into the cardinal's office and uses a knife to unlock the cabinet. Inside, she discovers a file filled with newspaper clippings about the accident she narrowly escaped. Suddenly, she hears a scream and follows it to find its source. She comes across a room where she witnesses a seemingly faceless nun cutting off Gwen's tongue as punishment. Cecilia slowly backs away from the door and is surprised when a sickly nun covers her mouth to prevent her from screaming. The sickly nun hands her a cross with her hair wrapped around it. Cecilia pleads with the nun to help her escape, but the nun ominously tells her that no one can ever leave the convent. The next day, Cecilia's scream alarms everyone, including Father Tedeschi, who hurries to her room. They find her bleeding heavily, and Cecilia begs Father Tedeschi to take her to the hospital. However, a nurse praying in Cecilia's room detects a strange smell in the blood. She discovers a bag under Cecilia's bed containing the blood of a dead chicken. On their way to the hospital, Father Tedeschi gets a call revealing that Cecilia made up the miscarriage to run away. Cecilia tries to run off, but Father Tedeschi catches her. She is brought back to the convent, and a senior nun aggressively bathes her while chastising her for attempting to escape. When Cecilia talks back, the senior nun smacks her in the face. Cecilia is then restrained in a wheelchair as Father Tedeschi takes the nail out of the box and shows it to her. He reveals that before becoming a priest, he was a geneticist, and he had extracted DNA samples from the crucifixion nail to create a new Jesus. After 2 decades of struggle, they finally succeeded in creating another Virgin Mary who would give birth to the new Jesus. Father Tedeschi then brings Cecilia to the basement and shows her the jars containing the fetuses. Deacon holds Cecilia's leg as Father Tedeschi burns her feet in the shape of a cross. Finally, Cecilia is locked in a room to prevent her from escaping again. In her 3rd trimester, Cecilia, with teary eyes, speaks to the cardinal as she pulls a nail out of her finger. The doctor checks on her baby again and leaves her with the Reverend Mother afterward. While the Reverend Mother is busy looking at the baby through the monitor, Cecilia discreetly grabs the crucifix and beats the Reverend Mother to death with it. Cecilia steps out of her room, holding back the screams of pain as her water breaks. The cardinal is smoking when Cecilia sneaks up behind him and kills him by strangling him with her rosary. She gets caught by Dr. Gallo, but he runs away in fear. Cecilia then heads straight to the basement, pouring ethanol all over Father Tedeschi's lab and lighting the lighter when Father Tedeschi appears. Cecilia feels pain in her belly again, giving Father Tedeschi the chance to stop her from setting his lab on fire. She grabs a flask and hits Father Tedeschi on the head with it before running away. Locking Father Tedeschi inside the lab, Cecilia tries to escape, but he grabs her hair, holding her back. With no other option, Cecilia lights her lighter and drops it on the ground, setting both Father Tedeschi in the lab on fire. Father Tedeschi breaks through the door and manages to save himself. Cecilia rushes downstairs and finds herself in the catacombs beneath the convent. She runs frantically, searching for an exit, but pauses when she hears a voice calling out to her. Looking around the chamber, fear grips her as she turns on the lights and discovers Gwen's mutilated body. Desperate to escape, she continues searching and suddenly spots daylight peeking through a hole large enough for her to crawl through. However, Father Tedeschi catches her before she can escape, and he starts chanting rituals as he cuts Cecilia's belly to get her baby. Cecilia is in extreme pain but still manages to grab the crucifixion nail and stab Father Tedeschi's neck with it. Father Tedeschi drops dead, and Cecilia crawls out through the hole. Right outside, she falls on her knees and screams as she gives birth to her baby. Cecilia is horrified at the sight of her baby, and though the baby is unseen, it is still understood that Cecilia's baby must have turned into some kind of monster as it lets out inhuman gurgling sounds. Cecilia cuts the umbilical cord with her teeth before grabbing a rock. With a harrowing scream, she then uses the rock to strike her own baby to kill him, and after that, the story reaches its conclusion.